And Ellerslie, that must be Irish.
That came from a
Sounds Irish. But
Walter Scott's novels. It's mentioned in there, and that was a popular set of books.
Really?
At the time this was settled, Waverly Hall came out of that set of books also.
Sir Walter Scott.
Sir Walter Scott.
He had the Waverly series of books.
Oh, interesting. Y'all are a font of information. I would have never known any. I have no idea.
In the 1820s, that set of books was the equivalent of going to a who's somebody that's really popular now that you'd go to their concert. I mean, that was like
He was famous.
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift. That was like going to a Taylor Swift concert to have those things in your living room.
Right.
That was the height of entertainment.
Oh, cool.
And if you were any person of means, you had a library in your parlor.
Yeah.
And the bigger the library, the more, I guess, prestige that gave somebody. But William Osborne at Waverly Hall had this full set of Sir Walter Scott novels, and he was just such a fan of it that he named Waverly Hall. And General Charles Phillips lived here, and he named this place Ellerslie.
Okay.
And General Phillips is buried on his farm around Ellerslie, and I cannot find out where it is.
Where it is.
He's got a monument on his grave.
Yeah.
Nobody
There's a lot of woods.
Nobody can tell us
Wow.
where he's buried. So
That's
we're going to work on
amazing.
that. But anyway,
And
we'll
you
get
need-
around to this video one of these days.
Hey, that's actually pretty cool little information there.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, it's Robert coming to you with another adventure into history. Today we are back at the Bonetown Cemetery here in Harris County, Georgia. I'm out here with Dan and Mr. John Posey, the man who owns the land that this cemetery is on. Previously, we were out here with Mr. Lynn Strozier from Omega Mapping, who did ground penetrating radar on this site to locate as many graves as could be found. And the total number was 243 that was found in this section. There are more graves that extend over there. Since we've been here last, the land has been cleared. Here, the leaves have been cleared, so we can see all of the indentions and the stones marking the graves. We're going to be taking a look at that today, and also talking about some of the history that we have found of this place, and about some of the history of the people who are buried here. So what did we find out about where we're at, Dan?
Robert went to the courthouse, and he found the original landowner was, of course, a person who drew this in the land lottery. He sold this land to someone, and then they turned around and sold it again. And all within just 1 or 2 years. In 1829, I believe Mr. Rutledge bought it, William Rutledge. And William Rutledge passed away in 1860. So from 1829 until 1860, he was the owner of this property. Now it continued to be owned by his family. And it was not sold, I believe he said, until
1886.
his estate was settled in 1886 maybe. And Mr. Rutledge, I understand, is buried in Ellerslie, so we'll go find his grave shortly. But anyway, this was the Rutledge plantation, or part of it, and that it kind of stands to reason that that is who some of these earliest burials in here are related to, is the Rutledge plantation. They're part of that. They would have been enslaved people on that plantation.
And Mr. Rutledge does appear on the slave schedule for 1850, I believe, and at the time he had 22 people enslaved, all the way from people who were in their 50s to young children who were enslaved. So he was definitely a slave owner here and on this plantation, or on this land that was his plantation. So last time we were here, the site was completely covered in about a 3 or 4 inch layer of leaves, and the leaves were removed so our friend Brother Lynn could finish his ground penetrating radar scan of this area, and he did do that and located 243 graves in this section here. So we're going to be taking a look at the land now that it is cleared. This is actually kind of a rare opportunity for us, because so many of the times when we're looking at sites like this, they're covered over in dirt and leaves, and we're not able to see how it basically would have looked when these people were buried here, when this ground was cleared, and we can see all of the rocks, the field stones that mark this. We've also made some kind of interesting discoveries with some other grave markers here. So what do you think, Dan, with how clear this is now? We can see the indentions.
It is amazing. And you don't have to stand and have the light catch it just right so that you can see the indentations in the earth now. You can see out here with the sun straight above us, and it is just really amazing how many human beings are buried here.
It really is. As we scan around, hopefully this shows up on camera. These indentions are usually relatively hard to see on video, but I think it'll be easier now with the leaves removed. As we go up through here, you can see almost like waves in the dirt, and the flags are in the middle of each grave. I think that will show up very well with the indentions, and there will be more to see as we continue. Another thing that I frequently talked about on video is the tradition of artifacts that we often find that are specific to African American cemeteries, where they would have pottery, water vessels, and that sort of thing placed on top of graves. We had discussed that we didn't see any of that out here, but with the leaves removed, there are various artifacts and lots of broken glass scattered through here. What was that, Dan?
That's the handle off of a casket.
Really?
Yeah. Now, either that fell off when they were burying somebody. You know, things like that happen. They could have been burying a very large person and that pulled off. Or when they were burying somebody out here, they disturbed a grave, and this just got tossed aside. But
how old
that
would
is
you
what that is.
say that is?
I'd say, because it has that spring on the back of it, it's a swing bar style. So I don't know, probably 1930s, 40s.
We do know that the burials continued out here, so that's it's a pretty fascinating. You have lots of pieces of artifact and broken glass that you find out here. This is one of the most interesting, is this old, would this be called crockery? And this was something that is often attributed to kind of a burial item that would have been placed on African American burials, even dating back to times of enslavement. Do you have any idea like how old that piece would be?
That piece could have been any time after the 1860s. I'd say anywhere from 1870 to 1900.
So that's a original burial artifact there. Again, as we look down, you can see lots of indentions, and obviously you can see the placement of the crosses has started. We'll talk about that. Let's have a look up here and take a look at some of these burials. This is probably going to be one of the better examples of the indentions out here. We've got the crosses and the flags to help us see them, but you see how this is just in a row right here. I think this is probably one of the best visual representations of unmarked graves that we've been able to do on this channel in our documentations, because it's rare for us to be able to see it quite like this, where they're getting well marked. Of course, we do see the field stones, which are easier to see now, but it's impressive. We've got a couple interesting things here. On the previous video, we talked about the headstone for Henry Jenkins and how it is out of place, out of its place. The graves are buried here east to west, so the headstone would be facing that way. Like these over here are positioned. This one is not, it's out of place, but it has a broken footstone that was revealed when the leaves were removed. It was buried under the leaves right there, and it's broken off at the bottom. So if the bottom portion of that could still be found in the ground, we'd have an idea of maybe where this headstone goes. And of course, it could go on this side of the property, or it could go over there where there are more graves. And this is a really good example of how it looked before when we were looking at it. Filled up with leaves. There are a lot of burials out there too. And then we look over here and this is how it looks. Cleared off. So there's another theory that what could have happened to this grave too. You want to mention that, Dan?
As we said in the previous video, Brother Lynn Strozier determined that there was no one buried under this marker here. There's not a grave here. This marker looks as if it was moved from somewhere else, especially that the footstone is propped up against it there, having been broken off from somewhere. It's my theory that this grave was down here close to the road, and this is one of the graves that may have been disturbed or partially disturbed when the county widened the road here and straightened the road many, many years ago. That was probably done in the 1940s or 50s. And I would, of course it's my guess, but I would guess that they moved that headstone up here out of the way.
Because we do know that the graves continued out towards the road.
Yes,
We found evidence of graves that were essentially cut in half when this
right.
embankment was cut.
This embankment was cut. The old road, in other words, the dirt road, before this road was paved, the road bed still exists over there in those woods. So the road was moved over here where it is now when it was straightened. They took a little curve out of it, which is what they normally do when they pave roads. But they did infringe on the cemetery a little bit here. Now they may not have done it all at once. This could have been done, gradually over time, because the county used to come and scrape out ditches every year or two. And the road grader could have got a little farther along as time went by. And then of course you had utilities that came in and underground utilities and things like that. And it eventually made the right of way a little bit further this way each time. Well, it's just, I believe that was probably moved there from somewhere else, like right over here. But we do know that this Henry Jenkins is the son of Willis Jenkins. Is that correct?
That's right.
And Willis Jenkins and his wife are buried right there. So this man's parents are buried here.
This is a really cool area that I wanted to really show on video. With the leaves gone, this grave actually had a brick and rock wall around it. This is marking the center of the grave here. And with the leaves gone, you can really see that neat little wall that was done around it. And it's got a mixture of bricks in here. Some of these bricks could have just been tossed in here as an afterthought, but we do have, I've talked about this a lot on video in the past. We've got a mixture of modern kind of brick. So this would be 1870s to 1900s brick here with what we would typically consider plantation era brick. And I am removing these to show them as example. They're going to be put back exactly where they were. But this is a really good comparison of the plantation brick that I've talked about so often. This is type of brick that would have been made out of the local red clay on the plantations, made by slave labor. This is more of a brickyard brick. This is still an old brick, probably 1870s to early 1900s, but it is a brickyard brick versus the plantation brick. You can see how ununiform the plantation brick is compared to the later one. And that's what makes me think that maybe some of these bricks were just kind of tossed here out of the way, although that one seems more original. But as we go a little bit further back, we've got this footstone right here that was revealed with the removal of the leaves. Now that footstone is for the grave of Flora Jenkins. She also had a rock wall around her. So what we're seeing here is a tie-in between Willis Jenkins, who has a little rock wall around his entire plot, and his wife Flora, and then another grave down here that's got a rock wall around it. So it stands to reason that this was somebody that was also connected to the Jenkins here. We just don't know who it is. Coming back up here, we have the grave of Flora Jenkins. It's a beautiful headstone. I have sprayed D2 on it. We're probably going to be coming back here in the future and we'll do an update as this stone cleans up. This was a very nice stone. In 1915 is when she passed away. And she was, again, the wife of Willis Jenkins over there, who was a veteran and has a veterans monument. This is not typical for an African-American burial of this time period, so it shows that during a time in which not many African-Americans were very prosperous, that Willis Jenkins and his wife were very prosperous, which brings us over here to Willis Jenkins, who is really an amazing grave. So Willis Jenkins was born in 1845. He was born in slavery on the Jenkins plantation, which is nearby here in Upatoy, Georgia, in Muskogee County. Willis Jenkins was the son of his enslaver, who was named Edmund Jenkins. That was told to me by descendants from Willis Jenkins and was proven with DNA from their DNA to descendants of the Jenkins family that showed that they shared DNA in the common ancestor was Willis Jenkins and of course his father. So Willis Jenkins was born enslaved on the Jenkins plantation, not too terribly far away from here, in 1845. In 1865, he most likely followed General Wilson to Macon, Georgia. General Wilson was a Union general who fought in the last battle of the Civil War in Columbus, and then he came this way, correct?
Yes.
And then he went to Macon after that?
Came through here going to Macon.
And Willis Jenkins wound up in Macon in 1865, and in 1865 he joined with the 138th USC Infantry. So that's 138th United States Colored Infantry. He was in Company D of this unit. He is a Union soldier, and he is considered to be a veteran of the Civil War. Now, he joined the Union Army after Lee's surrender and after the last battle of the Civil War in Columbus. But he is still considered to be a Union soldier and a veteran of the Civil War because the Civil War was not officially declared over until 1866. The 138th United States Colored Infantry served as an occupation force, as part of the occupation force after the Confederacy had been defeated, and to help out with the Reconstruction efforts. Willis Jenkins was mustered out in 1866 after the war had been declared over, and this unit was disbanded in Atlanta. After his service with the Union Army, turned of course back to the United States as a whole, he came back here to Harris County, Georgia, and he lived out the rest of his life here until he died in Atlanta. He had a lot of children. One of them is buried here, as we discussed, Mr. Henry over there, and he has a lot of descendants. One of his descendants started a church in Pine Mountain, and he's really got an incredible story, and we're lucky enough to find a photograph of him. And he did very well for himself, it seems, after coming back from serving in the Union Army. I did find a deed where he bought an acre of land nearby here that he owned, along with his wife, Flora. She, of course, died in 1915, but he did remarry, and I am unclear as to whether he had more kids with his second wife or not, but I do know that he remarried. So really a unique grave here. People often ask us on Adventures into History why we don't show many Union soldiers' graves, and this simply because we are in the South. Union soldiers, if they would be buried on the battlefields, of course, at Andersonville, or if they could be identified, if they were killed down in the South, they would have been sent back home for burial. So not a lot of Union soldiers lived down here after the war, but the Confederate soldiers, of course, did. And of course, they have the Confederate monuments that were provided by the VA starting in, I believe, the 1920s. So this is a rare example of a Union soldier that we have that lived down here. And while he never saw any combat, I think it's really an amazing story from a man who was enslaved to becoming a soldier for the Union Army and the United States government. And of course, this is a beautiful early VA marker with the shield on it. Really a cool story here. So Mr. John has joined us back out here. And Mr. John, we were just talking about this grave here, Willis Jenkins, who has an incredible story out here. He was born enslaved and became a Union soldier. So I think that that's a really amazing grave.
Fascinating, yeah, I love that.
So tell me, what are you doing out here now that it's been cleaned and you've got all the graves?
Well, now that Lynn left, I've went back and got my crosses that my carpenter made for me. He made me 100, and then he's going to make another 50. And the ones that Daddy had and that I had made, I think that was a total of like 22 maybe. So far I've only gotten about 80 in, but I've got another 20 of those in the first bunch, and then he's going to bring me 50 more, and then he doesn't know it yet, but maybe 100 more.
Yeah.
So I can mark them all. I basically just had the carpenter build the same out of cedar, and he made them a little longer, and I might put them a little deeper into the ground, but they're all cedar and pretty much made just like the Daddy had the Eagle Scout make the first ones, which are smaller, but I think they're fine, and I think they'll look good once they age and are in shade of trees. They won't look so obvious, but if you look down here through the sun, I just think it's wonderful that they're being recognized.
I do too.
Yeah.
And when I drove up here today, I've been here a couple times, of course, and to see all of the crosses that you've already got them out too.
Yeah.
You work quick.
Exactly.
And it looks amazing out here. It really does.
Thank you. You know, it does green up a little bit in the spring, somewhat. We usually keep it sort of mowed down, but I'm going to see what comes up. Just like in the field here, I basically just stopped making that a hay field and just left it natural, trying to find out what will come up. Mostly it's verbena, which I love verbena, but I'm hoping something more will pop up along in the next couple of years.
It'd be interesting to see what might grow with the leaves being removed.
Yeah,
here.
exactly. Because that's all, we've never raked anything of this, so it will be interesting. There's lots of grapes, I know grapevines and things, and lots of pines seedlings. And we do have dogwood, and we have a couple of red buds, I think. Some hollies that are trying to struggle, always Elaeagnus, which is sort of an invasive. I like it, but it's sort of a pain. But if you let it go natural, it's sort of pretty. Elaeagnus.
And what is that?
That's basically, it's this shrub over here. See that right there? I actually cut them down more often than not because they don't really give you much. People did make jelly out of the berries. Elaeagnus is what it's called. And that's basically just something that gets spread through the woods by the birds. Gotcha. Yeah, and they do bloom, nothing, conspicuous, but they also have those little fruits that people use to make jellies and stuff with. That's really cool. Yeah. So, and there's some magnolia over, pretty much it goes over to the next property. And then this is a big hickory. I'm not sure which hickory this is, but there's a shellbark hickory and there's a pignut hickory, and I'm not sure, but that's one of them. And there's a few of them that are really beautiful. Not in the cemetery, but in the property.
Well, it would be definitely cool to come back here in the spring.
Yeah, it's really pretty. I mean, I don't come out here a lot in the summertime because I'm a little bit wary of snakes, but generally I will if somebody goes ahead of me.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I already came out here and D2'd some of the graves.
Yeah.
So we were talking about earlier before we started filming that these have already started to clean up pretty well.
Great, yeah.
With the Harvey. And unfortunately, in all the history that we have found, like of Mr. Jenkins over there, and I just think it's amazing to be able to see this headstone that carries so much history with it, but also see a picture of the man who's...
I love that.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating. And I would love to know if these are sisters or if they're mother and daughter or whatever. But I know there's a couple of children graves. I even thought one of these was, so it's possible they're related to the Jenkins. I don't know that. You would know better than I do.
I believe right here, that one.
Oh yeah,
is-
exactly, because it's so short. So that's probably a child. I'd love to know more about it, just because I feel more attached to them because I've recognized their names first. When we first bought it in 1980, I thought they must be sisters, but that's probably not necessarily true. But they did die the same year.
They died very close.
Very close, like 6 months apart.
Yeah. I have unfortunately, we found, like I said, the absolutely amazing history of Willis Jenkins over there. And I'm so taken by that.
Oh, yeah.
In the fact that, then I'm repeating what I've already said on video,
Yeah.
but the fact that he was born into slavery and then became a soldier. And then,
I
of
know, I
course,
love that.
and
And at the end of the war, and he joined the Union.
yes.
Yeah,
And
as part of the Black Infantry.
that's right.
Yeah, see, I love hearing all that.
And it is so, you just have an amazing history
Yeah,
here in this
which
cemetery.
we never knew. My father would love to hear this. He would love to hear it.
Unfortunately, I have not been able to find anything on the two Harvey ladies that are here. We have Daisy Harvey, who
And
died
Fanny.
January 29th, 1920, and she was 32. And
Yeah.
yes, Fanny
And
over
this is
here.
Daisy. Or this is Fanny, that
Yeah.
was Daisy.
And Fanny, of course, has the amazing MTA headstone.
Yeah,
Fanny died July 27th, 1920.
but they didn't know her birth.
Yeah, they did not know her birth.
Yeah,
So I'd love to, hopefully I'll be able to find something else.
I would love to see them. Of
Oh,
course.
that would be amazing, yeah.
But that photograph that you got of the Jenkins, where did that come from, I wonder?
It was uploaded by one of his descendants.
Yeah.
Who actually has that picture.
Oh,
So,
that's wonderful.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing. And he's got a bunch of, Willis and Flora, who are both buried up there, they've both got a bunch of descendants.
Yeah, I wonder if that wasn't the family that came here with their family reunion. But for some reason, David was here and I wasn't. He, for some reason, thought it was the Harveys.
I will say that the descendants of Willis Jenkins that I talked to did not actually know where he was buried.
Oh, okay.
So I think that was an amazing thing too, to be able to
Yeah.
tell them, because as far as I could tell, other than your work here, this cemetery had never previously been really documented, and
don't
I know
think
we're all working towards that goal.
I hope I can get when I find out more, hopefully I can get a granite marker made with at least some of the people that I know are buried here, like on a common granite piece.
Yeah,
You know,
that-
just the names of the families and just put it up there somewhere where people can look
right.
and see if it's their relatives.
That's a beautiful idea.
Yeah, I hope so.
I also just wanted to point out this fieldstone here that is in line with this. And there's another amazing little piece right here. These are two bricks that are used to mark this grave here. We've got a brick on this end, and I'm not going to disturb that one, but I do want to show this one. And we're just going to pull it out of the ground just for a minute, then put it back. This is an old street paver. This is a Copeland and Inglis from Birmingham, Alabama. This was the manufacturer, Copeland and Inglis. This is a street paver brick. So this is different than, this is a brickyard brick. It's different than the plantation bricks that we've pointed out, or the late 1870s bricks. This was a street paver that was, is what the streets of Columbus, for one, were paved with. So interesting to find it
Oh, yeah.
out here marking a grave. And then over here, there was another plantation brick that also appears to be marking a grave. This is, again, another plantation era brick. You can see how crude it is. It would have been made out of the local red clay. And was this one, maybe that's just from the firing, but was this one salt glazed, or was that?
It does look like it's salt glazed. Yeah.
So another very old brick
Yeah, interesting.
marking a grave here. So
And I'm not sure why that is there.
I assume it would have been marking a grave, and maybe it just got kind of knocked out of the way.
Maybe so.
At some time, because this one appears to be another child.
Yeah.
And there's the footstone and the headstone here.
Oh yeah, and there's a brick there.
Yeah, there's,
isn't it?
I believe. Yeah, there's another. That's another plantation brick too. So
Wow. So maybe that one was against this rock.
yeah, it could
Like
have been. Could have been.
A couple of nights ago, I was looking around on findagrave.com, and I found the listing of a cemetery near here, which is Central Baptist Church, and was looking through the listings there. And a lot of times people will list a grave or a person in a cemetery where they may assume they're buried. They may find a death certificate when they're doing family research, and it'll just give the name of the community where the person was buried upon their death, and it doesn't give the name of the cemetery. Well, this one was listed under Central Baptist Church in Ellerslie in Harris County, Georgia. Her name is Ida Jenkins Willis, and her death certificate is there. Let's see, Ida was born July 12th, 1878, and died on October 17th, 1919 at age 41 years. She died in Atlanta. She lived on Whitehall Terrace in Atlanta, and she was the daughter of Willis Jenkins and Flora Reed Jenkins. And it says, place of burial, Ellerslie, Georgia. And that's all it says. The undertaker was, looks like Josie Brothers in Atlanta. So this lady was brought back to Ellerslie. Her husband's name was Willie Willis, but I would assume that she's buried next to her parents up here, or close to her parents. So that's one person buried here that we, that we didn't know about previously.
Yeah.
And
that's Willis and Jenkins now you're connected.
yes.
Interesting. Interesting.
There are probably many, many other death certificates that are similar to this one. It would be good to find some death certificates that actually had the name of Bonetown Cemetery or something, to give this, give some credence to what this cemetery was actually called back in those days.
Yeah. We always heard it was Bonetown. The people that sold, or Ms. Olive who sold us this, she said it's always been known as Bonetown. So I thought that had to be true because it was Bonetown Road. And everybody has heard of that.
Yeah.
Anybody like older than me. So, and I'm sure it's been there a while, I guess.
And many of the burials in here could predate death certificates anyway. Did you find a death certificate on Willis Jenkins?
I did.
Did it give his place of burial?
Ellerslie, Georgia.
Ellerslie, Georgia. No name of the cemetery.
I was hoping to find his death certificates that would start listing more people as being buried out here, but I think that's pretty key what you just found. I'd definitely say that she's buried here.
Yeah. So her name was Ida Willis Jenkins. Ida Jenkins Willis, wife of Willie Willis. So there's a strong possibility that her husband was brought here and buried as well upon his death.
And I wonder, the Harveys are the different story. Yeah.
And unfortunately, I just have not been able to find a death certificate on the Harveys.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why.
Yeah.
And at the time of their deaths, the use of death certificates was still in its early days. A lot of people were not abiding by that. There were death
in
certificates
1920.
in the 1920s. Yeah. Death certificates were required then, but a lot of people just didn't do it.
Yeah.
Little country doctors had a death certificate booklet that they kept in their travel bag.
Yeah.
And they would fill out a death certificate, and a copy would go to the county courthouse and be registered there. But a lot of doctors did not keep up with it.
Huh. That's interesting too.
HCX preservation.
HCX preservation.
Yeah. That's my 501c3.
Oh.
That where I needed to show you one of the cemeteries that we've restored.
Oh.
Or are restoring. It's amazing. It is amazing. If you like old cemeteries,
And those are monuments there.
They're incredible. I'll show you pictures.
Not unmarked like all these.
Well, this has been an absolutely incredible journey, I guess you'd say, for us in joining you with this. I've said it several times that it is it's beautiful what you're doing out here, and I really mean that. There is incredible history here for this. So many times we see this cemetery and we get an idea of the history of it, but to actually know the personal stories of the people out here is not as common and is absolutely amazing. So you've got the amazing history here. It's a beautiful place, and so many times with cemeteries, they are, especially cemeteries like this, especially old cemeteries that began as enslaved cemeteries, are deeply forgotten about. And they're often only marked with the rocks that we see and indentions.
Yeah.
And there are property owners that either disregard that the cemeteries exist, want to destroy the cemeteries. There's a case of a cemetery like this that I know of that the property owner doesn't want anybody to know it's there. And he said that he would rather plow it over than let people know it's here. So I think that what you're doing is absolutely amazing, and it is a model to go by for other people who have cemeteries, and I just think it's beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you.
For preserving this place.
And my dad would be really, he would be so happy to know that somebody came out here and cared, because he really did care. We just didn't know how far to go with it.
Yeah.
Until I met Lynn.
Right.
And when I met him, I thought, that's excellent if he would do it.
Yeah.
He's busy, but he did come and he's shed a lot of light on it. Along with you two, I appreciate it.
I don't know,
very much.
You're welcome. I, like we mentioned on video, I've put D2 to clean these graves. Those two are already starting to look good. Those others, they'll probably need another treatment. So I'll come out here and do that in the future, and it'll be really cool to see this place as you continue to mark the graves out here.
I would love to hear anything else you have to say
And yeah,
in the future or anytime.
we'll definitely keep researching it and see what more we can find.
That's the same. That's another shellbark,
Okay.
hickory, and there's one behind you too. So that's sort of just a native tree that I think are particularly beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's monumental in their feeling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How old would you say those trees are?
I would have a hard time telling you. There's one down here in the woods that's got 3 stems, and it's beautiful. I'm sure it must 100 years old maybe. I'm guessing they're not particularly fast
Gotcha.
growing. But I don't know. I wish I did know. But I do love them. And they turn the most beautiful color in fall. Yellow, gold yellow. They're very beautiful.
It's a beautiful tree.
Yeah.
Beautiful place too.
Yeah.
It really is. Well, I hope everyone has enjoyed following along with this, again, incredible preservation effort out here. I mean, this is really what it's all about, is making sure that these people are remembered and this place is protected, and you're doing a phenomenal job of that. It is amazing to see it cleared off like this.
I
We
know.
can see every little detail, every indention, and I hope that we can find some more history of it for you.
Me too. I'd love that.
And maybe in the next, in upcoming time, we can go, I'd love to have you join us, and we can go visit the father of Willis Jenkins.
Yeah.
He's buried nearby, and also the original landowner, the plantation owner, William Rutledge, who's buried nearby.
Yeah,
If you'd
love
like to
to
join
see
us on
that.
that and tie in some more history to this place.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome. Well,
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you
John.
very much.
And we
Nice-
will see
Nice to
y'all-
know you.
Nice to know you too. Very nice to meet you. And we'll see y'all next time.